passed GED RLA and are looking for some help with the GED extended response portion, or the essay, that's what we're going to talk about in this video. So I'm going to break down all kinds of tips, tricks, and strategies. I'm going to share probably more examples in this video of real writing from real GED test takers than I've ever put in any one video before. So I'm really excited to jump in here, and my goal with this video is to really help lay a framework here for you to get some points on the essay or even get a high score on the essay to ultimately get a better overall score on GED RLA so you can pass RLA and move ahead to bigger and better things in life as you finish the other sections of the GED. So let's get started. One urban legend is that if you use the word I in your writing, that you can either fail or lose points for that. Now, the GED testing service denies that this is the case, and so my opinion on this is that I generally tell students not to use the word I if you can help it. Now, the testing service denies that that's going to hurt you, but the reason is because the whole point of the extended response essay is that you're going to read two different passages, and you have to pick out which one is best supported by the evidence, and you're going to write about why that is the strongest position, all right? You're not writing about your personal feelings. You're not writing about which position you agree with. And so sometimes what people do is when they write the word I, and this is something that when you write your essay, if you feel yourself wanting to use the word I, just make sure that you're not using your own opinion and beliefs in the essay, all right? So I would caution you to avoid using the word I just because sometimes people have a tendency to talk about their own beliefs and their own feelings, which is really not what you want to do. All right, you want to stick to talking about which position has the best evidence in favor of it, all right, not what you believe. So that's pretty much why I would stay away from using the word I, just so that you avoid that tendency to write about what you think instead of which one has the best evidence. But technically, the GED testing service does state that you're not going to lose points or be penalized for using the word I. So another urban legend is that you can skip the essay or get a 0 on the essay and still pass GED RLA. And actually, there is some truth to this. And there once was a time when it wasn't common knowledge that you could get a 0 on the essay and still pass RLA. And I think, many years ago, I started talking about this in my videos, after, I heard David Cohen talk about this, who is another GED, he has another channel on GED Test Prep, which is a really good channel. He's talked about it before too. But I think more and more people now, because of the internet, have figured out that you can get a 0 on the essay and still pass the RLA section. All right. However, hear me out on this though, because, that is not really a good test taking strategy because that essay, it's still worth 20% of your score. So you got to ask yourself, are you really confident that you're going to destroy the multiple choice section? Because, in theory, if you do really well in the multiple choice, you can still pass if you get a 0 on the essay. But at the end of the day, all right, I've known a lot of people that said that the essay is what bailed them out. So a score on the essay can make the difference between passing or failing the whole entire section. And I don't want to see you have to retake. I don't want to see you have to keep retaking over and over again. It's stressful for you and can be stressful for your whole family. It's expensive. So I would really highly recommend to prepare for that essay, all right? Just don't stress out too much about it, but definitely prepare for it because it's only going to help your score. Did you know that the essay is actually scored by a computer algorithm grading system? Well, if you didn't, this is something I want to talk about here, and this is something that a lot of people are often interested in knowing about when I talk about this in my videos, but unfortunately, and in my opinion, the GED testing service they don't really have a lot of transparency about how this works. They call it the ASE, which I think stands for Automatic Scoring Engine. And basically, and this is what the GED testing service says about how it works, basically. They say that the automatic scoring engine catalogs the characteristics of a writing sample, compares those characteristics to real exemplar responses with known scores, and assigns a score based on similarity to existing exemplars. If no similar responses are found, the extended response is going to be scored by a human. So basically, the way I understand this, and this is just kind of my interpretation of it, it seems to me like, a bunch of GED test essays were once hand graded, and so graded by people, and so the scoring engine is basically going to take your essay and it's going to kind of scan it somehow, I'm assuming, and it's going to compare it to essays that are similar to it, and based off of the scores that were assigned to those exemplar essays by humans, it's going to see how well does your essay match up to those. All right. And so that's kind of my understanding of it, at least. And so these are just kind of my theories about how the essay algorithm works. But basically, we do know that the testing service has told us that you need between 300 to 500 words to get a good score on your test. So there's really only two ways that this would make sense. Either A, maybe the automatic scoring algorithm has some kind of word count feature, just like a Word document where it counts how many words yours has. And maybe if you have less than 300 words, maybe it just kind of marks it as a 0. Or it could be that when it takes your essay and compares it to the example cases, the example cases that have poorer scores might have fewer than 200 words. So might have fewer than 300 words, I mean. So then in that case, if you write less than 300 words, your essay is going to be matched with the poorer scoring essays, if that makes sense. So that's just kind of my guess here. But we do know that there is a minimum length you have to write to get an acceptable score. All right, so basically, the next thing I would say here is that, in order to make sure that you're not just writing like random junk and stuff like that, okay, I'm assuming that, the algorithm is going to have some way of detecting like if you're just copying and pasting from the passages, because that's another thing that I see students do sometimes, like when they are writing, is they will copy and paste like large portions from the passages. So I'm assuming that the scoring engine has some way of detecting that. So, you have to meet that word count of 300 to 500 words, but you can't just, write anything in there to just write any kind of junk in order to achieve that word count, because I'm assuming that, the algorithm is going to pick up if you're just, taking things, copying large portions of the essay. All right, we don't know that for sure, but I'm just assuming that's how that would work. And so basically, there's another urban legend out there then that kind of comes from this, automatic scoring engine. Some people think that there's like kind of words and keywords and things you can put in your essay to kind of game the system. And my opinion on this is that, hey, if your essay is going to be matched up against other essays to see how similar it compares, then, there's probably some kind of keyword matching that it uses to do that, but there's no real transparency about that. So, my best advice on this would be to, there's certain words like transition words and things like that that should be in your essay, which are going to make your essay stronger. And if you put these transition words and phrases into your essay, it's going to make your essay stronger, which will then hopefully make it more likely to match up against those strong essays. When the computer matches yours to, those stronger essays, hopefully that'll give you a better score. All right, other than that, we're not really sure what kind of phrases really are the computer's looking for. So I just wouldn't expect to be able to go in there and kind of game the system using keywords and stuff like that. All right, they deny that that's a thing that you can do. And so I just wouldn't worry about that. Just write it as if, put in some of the stuff that I tell you to in this video if you want to. And, try your best to write it as if a human's grading it. And you just let the score fall where it's going to fall, because we don't really have much knowledge about how the grading system really works. It's not really revealed to us. So unfortunately, I don't really have much more to say about that. But if you have any ideas about how it works, just put it down below. So another urban legend is that either there's something wrong with the computer grading system, like some kind of glitch that gives everybody zeros, or that, nobody gets points on the essay, everybody gets a 0 no matter what you write. But I have heard, though, from other GED instructors that have done this for a long time, who do a lot of in-person instruction, that they do see a lot of students get zeros. So, obviously the testing service, is going to say, they're going to say that, hey, it's an urban legend that there's something wrong with the machine, the computer, that gives everybody zeros. All right, but I have heard instructors say that a lot of their students do get zeros sometimes. So, the question is, are the students just not writing effectively and that's why they're getting zeros? Or is there something weird with the grading system that's giving people zeros? I don't know. All right, who knows? Nobody knows. But, I would just focus on what you can control and just try to do the best that you can on the essay, because if you follow the method that I'm going to teach you in this video and practice with it, I can't guarantee anything, but you should be able to get some points at least for the essay, all right? That should be a realistic goal for most people. So this kind of goes along with the conspiracy theory that floats around sometimes that really comes from people failing the GED test by like a point or two. And, across all sections of the GED, not just RLA, I have seen a lot of people over the years report failing by like a point or two. And so, I guess the question is, did they just not do a good enough job answering the questions and they just got really close and just unfortunately they failed by a point or two? Or is there some kind of glitch or something in the system that causes people to fail by a point or two? Because this happens to a lot of people, all right? A lot of people fail by a point or two. I don't know, all right? So I'm just going to kind of leave that up to you to decide what you think about that. So the basics of the essay, what you're trying to do, you have to read two different sources and decide which one's making the stronger argument. And you're going to have 45 minutes to write. Now, there's a bit of a debate about whether or not that's enough time, but that is what you're given, so we have to live with that. But just to show you some examples here of prompts, in one case, maybe you have to read two different emails and you have to pick which author is making the stronger argument. It could be two different guest columns, or it could be maybe a press release and the letter to the editor, just to show you a couple different prompts. But basically, you're going to read two different passages. You pick whichever position is best supported by the evidence, and you're going to really develop in your essay why. Okay, so some things to look for when you're reading those two passages. You want to look for specific examples, facts, data, stats, and surveys, expert authority and opinions, recent dates, and results from research, studies, and experiments. Now, a common question is, how do I know which passage to pick? And the GED testing service says that it doesn't matter. They say it's an urban legend that there's one right answer. And so basically, I say pick whichever one you think is going to be easiest to write about, and then because there is no right or wrong answer here, all right? So I say whichever one has the most evidence and facts and things that jump out at you, whichever one you think is going to be the easiest to write about, that's what you want to write about. And then, so once you've figured out which passage you want to focus your writing about, you want to look for three main reasons why. And when you write your body paragraphs, each body paragraph is going to be themed around one big reason why you thought that passage is best supported by the evidence. And that's what we're going to talk about in just a second. To fully maximize your score on the GED essay, there is a proven formula that you're going to want to use, and that is the 5-paragraph essay method. Now, it involves writing 5 paragraphs, and the first paragraph is an introduction, and I'm really hoping that if nothing else from this video, you really take away a good understanding of how to write the introductory paragraph on your test. All right. Now, the 3 body paragraphs, we're also going to look at some examples of how to do those, as well as the conclusion, and the introduction and the conclusion will hopefully be the easiest parts of your essay to write. All right, the body paragraphs can be a little bit trickier, but we're going to look at some strategies you can use to hopefully make that simple. And as a good rule of thumb, you want to shoot for 3 to 7 sentences per paragraph. All right, now if you want to remember that 3 to 7 sentence paragraph thing and count your sentences, that's one way to do it. All right, but you don't necessarily need to count them. Just generally know that, if your paragraph is only 1 or 2 sentences, that's way too short. And if you're going on and on past like 15 or 20 sentences, then you've probably written way too much. So just keep that 3 to 7 sentence benchmark in mind here as you do your essay. So the first paragraph and how you start your essay is hopefully going to be the part that's the most straightforward here, at least when we look at some examples. All right, if you use this formula here, then you're giving yourself the most potential to maximize your score. All right. Now, if you make some grammar mistakes or errors or things like that in the first paragraph, sure, that might hurt your score a little bit. But if you use this format, all right, you can't really be wrong in the introduction. All right, you follow this format here. Probably the biggest thing you'd have to worry about after that is just, grammar issues, run-on sentences, things like that. Okay. So you just want to start off your writing with a topic sentence. And I'm going to show you a couple formulas that you can use. And like I said, we're going to look at examples of how to do this too. Lots of examples to come here too. And then you're going to want to take both positions and you're going to want to basically summarize them. All right. So you're going to want to state author A's position in one sentence and then author B's position in another sentence. Now, you can actually do this in one sentence, all right, if you feel confident in your writing skills and in your grammar skills. But, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, what I would recommend doing is just state the positions as 2 separate sentences, all right? And then lastly, you're going to give your own claim about which position is best supported in one sentence. Okay, so this is really it right here. It's that simple. And if right now, just looking at this, you're
this is giving you more anxiety because it's giving you more to worry about, then please just stick with me here. All right, we're going to look at some examples that hopefully make this make more sense. Now, one thing I want to note here too, between sentences 2 and 3, right, between author A's position and author B's position, all right, it would be a nice touch to add a contrast transition word or phrase. So something like however, in contrast, on the other hand, yet, but, although, or while. All right, and we'll look at examples of this too. So don't worry if, right now I'm just showing you the basic stuff here, and it'll hopefully make more sense once you see it in examples. Okay, so here are a couple formulas you can use. A simple one is blank is a controversial issue. All right, now on your test, are you going to type in a blank? No, all right, you're not going to type in blank. All right, you're going to put whatever the actual topic is into the blank. So if, let's say you read two passages and they're both about what is the best age to give kids a cell phone. All right, you type in the best age to give kids a cell phone is a controversial issue. Okay. Now the next formula is there's much debate about blank. All right, so again, for example, you could say there's much debate about the best age to give kids a cell phone. Simple enough. Now the third topic sentence formula is author A has a different viewpoint than author B on blank. All right, and again, you would put in whatever the topic is into the blank, and you obviously don't want to type out author A and author B. You want to use whoever the person's name is. All right, whatever the name is. All right, that's what you're going to put in place of author A and in place of author B. Okay. All right, so let's look at our first example here, and I just want to say that, it takes a lot of guts and courage to put your writing out there publicly, and this is a real writing example, as are all of these, that a student actually sent to me. Now, this was several years ago when I got this writing, but, by no means am I, we're not going to pick on anybody here for their writing skills. This is hard to do, all right? It takes guts to share your writing. So, by no means in this, as I draw, your attention to things that we can improve and change here, just know that by no means are we picking on anybody or the writing. We're just trying to learn as much as we can here, all right? So let me read this first, and then I'll let you pause the video, and, I'll give you some things to look for in this writing here to help you, all right? Now, keep in mind, I know this is tedious and this is hard work, but the more you do this, the more it's really going to drill this into your head. So the person starts off by writing both articles from the Freeport Times. They offer positions that are supported by both fact and opinion. The first article is written by Kai Fernandez, APRN, which she claimed parenting education should be mandatory, while the second article wrote by Sophie Thomas, mother of 3, which she argued about new parents do not need mandatory education. Both sides make an acceptable case. The first article provides a stronger argument. Okay, so what I want you to do now is I'd like you to, first of all, think about what is the topic sentence here, okay? And then I want you to do topic sentence and then find what are the two positions, all right, in this first paragraph. And then I want you to also pick out, all right, remember, we're also going to pick out the person who wrote this, what is their claim about which position is best supported, all right? And then also think about anything that jumps out at you that you would change about this. So let's have you pause the video and just reread this on your own if you need to, and just find the topic sentence, find the two positions, and let me know which position the writer of this thinks is the best supported. Okay, so right off the bat here, what I see is the writer wrote, both articles from the Freeport Times, they offer positions that are supported by both fact and opinion, all right? So, maybe some things we could nitpick here about the sentence structure or the wording, but, we see that this is a really good example of a topic sentence, all right? So the person definitely started off with a topic sentence here. And again, we could nitpick different things about how the sentence is structured, blah, 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 all right? But, as far as just generally, they did a great job starting off with a topic sentence. So next, the writer continues to say, the first articles wrote by Kai Fernandez, APRN, which she claimed parenting education should be mandatory. So that would be like author A's position in the formula. And then the part in the light blue color says, well, the second article wrote by Sophie Thomas, mother of 3, which she argued about new parents do not need mandatory education. So that would be like author B's position. So the writer of this, again, start off with a topic sentence, and then they listed the two authors' positions here, which is exactly what you want to do. Now, That's not to say there's not some, grammar issues and things here that we would want to correct, all right? So, for example, it says the first article is wrote by Kai Fernandez. You probably want to say the first article written by Kai Fernandez, something like that. So there's things here that, we might want to change, all right, for this to get the highest score possible. But right now, we're just looking at the structure, and the way this is structured is very good. Okay, so then here is the person's claim about which position is best supported. All right, so the writer said both sides make an acceptable case. The first provides a stronger argument. All right, so very clear. All right, so the person who wrote this, they read both of the different articles, and they thought that the first one provides a stronger argument. All right, so at the very least, this writer would get an A+ in my book for using the proper structure throughout the entire first paragraph here. Okay. Now, is this perfect? No, it's not perfect, all right? Are there some grammar things and some sentence structure things that the writer would want to clean up? Absolutely. But at the very least, what I want you to see from this is that, maybe you're not going to become a grammar genius overnight and perfectly avoid run-on sentences and comma issues and things like that, all right? But at the very least, you can still hopefully use the proper structure for the introduction to still give yourself a chance to get as many points as you can, okay? So this is just an example of how you could do this. So I kind of rewrote this article here. This is just one example of how you could do it, just to kind of clean up some of the grammar things because the structure was perfect, just some grammar issues. So the way I would rewrite this would be both articles from the Freeport Times offer positions that are supported by both fact and opinion. Kai Fernandez, APRN, who wrote the first article, claims parenting education should be mandatory. In contrast, Sophie Thomas, who wrote the second article, claims new parents do not need mandatory education. Both sides make an acceptable case, but the first article provides a stronger argument. All right, so this is my work here, basically rewriting the students. Here's the student's first example here, and this is my work basically keeping the same structure and keeping all the elements that the student used intact, but just kind of fixing some little grammar things here. And so one thing I want to draw your attention to is, so see how I put this in contrast in here? That's just another little transition phrase you can stick in. So here is that first sentence identifying author A's position about Kai Fernandez. And then you could say something like, in contrast, comma, and then state author B's position. All right. So just one thing to notice here. And other than that, like I said, the person definitely used really good structure. All right, just some grammar things that we'd want to clean up. All right. Okay, so let's look at another example here This is also sent to me by a real GED test taker. All right, so let's read this, and then I'll give you a chance to pause it, and I'll tell you some things to look for here. So the writer says the topic of restricting internet in the workplace has become a big issue. Justine Simmons, the CEO of a company, believes that internet in the workplace needs to be limited. Henri Abel and her colleagues, however, argue that internet in the workplace should be free to access. Henri's argument is the better supported one because she uses multiple sources of evidence as well as named experts and a response to Justine's problems by presenting better solutions. Okay, so what I'd like you to think about here is, number one, pick out the topic sentence. So what do you think the topic sentence is, and do you think it's a good topic sentence? So why don't we have you find that first, and then pick out what are the two different positions, all right, and then also which position does the person think is best supported by the evidence, all right? So let's have you pause the video. Really try to find these three things, because when you write your real essay, you're going to have to make sure that you have all of these things in your own writing. So I think if you look at someone else's writing, it should help you out here. So hopefully you had a chance to pause the video and try that out. Now, the topic sentence here is the first sentence, which I highlighted in green. The topic of restricting internet in the workplace has become a big issue. So I don't see anything wrong with that. That's a good topic sentence. It's just telling us the topic. What is the piece about? All right, so the person's going to write their essay on the topic of restricting internet in the workplace and how it's become a big issue. So that's a good topic sentence. All right, now the two different positions here are Justine Sims, who believes internet should be limited in the workplace. Then there's also Henri Abel and her colleagues who are on the other side. They're going to say that internet in the workplace should be free to access. Okay. And so that's the person did a really good job of telling me, author A's position and author B's position, all right?
This video's champion shoutout goes to a test taker who just passed both math and science and says that just got my scores in 165 and 164 respectively. I'm really glad because I'm not so good at either of those subjects, so I just wanted to get them out of the way. I'm so glad it worked out. I also got better scores than I did on the practice tests. Looking forward to writing RLA and social studies. So we want to wish this test taker the best of luck on RLA and social studies. And as you're watching this right now, I want to wish you the best of luck on the RLA too, because I know that that's what you're here for.
So the first sentence here is the topic sentence, and it basically tells us that the corporation's going to start a new policy that's going to restrict internet usage. Now, this topic sentence doesn't necessarily follow one of those formulas that we've looked at earlier, but it does tell us what the topic of the piece is, which is the restriction of internet use. Now, it's pretty clear here, it's really clear which the two positions are, right? So there's the Niagara Equipment Corp. They believe visiting non-work-related websites is bad, and then the employees believe that they should have unlimited access to the internet. So it's pretty clear what the two sides are here. Okay, and also here note that the writer here stated which position they are going to write the essay about, but the one thing I want to point out here is that notice how the writer says, I believe that the policy should not be enforced because the company should have trust over the employees that they hire. So one thing I would caution everyone watching this to do when you're writing is always make sure that you write about which article or which email is best supported by the facts and the evidence, all right? You're not necessarily writing it about which position you agree with, okay? So if I'm a worker in a company, I'm obviously, if I can get unlimited internet access, I'm going to want that, right? And so, I probably would tend to agree more that, on a personal level that, having unlimited internet access would be a good thing for the employees, but it's not my opinion that counts here, right? So just remember, we're not writing the essay about which one you believe is better. You're writing about which position is best supported by the evidence. So just keep that in mind here. So the person did a good job. They laid this out. We see a topic sentence. They have identified the two different positions, and they are giving us a claim about which position they think is best. But, it's more... the thing that I would just want you to take away from this example is it almost seems like they're writing more about their personal opinion here, that they think the company should have trust over the employees instead of which side is more supported by the evidence, all right? So just something to keep in mind here. And again, we're not picking on anybody here, all right, at all by any means. It takes a lot of courage to show your writing, and, anyone who, is willing to share their writing for us to learn from, all right, we want to be really grateful for it here. But I'm just pointing things out, so everyone watching this can learn from it. And really, this is one of the big problems with making I statements that I see. Okay, so, again, it's an urban legend that, you'll lose points or that you'll fail if you use the word I throughout your writing. All right, but the reason I would caution people, the main reason I would caution you to avoid using I if you can is because, if you're writing I believe, all right, you might be writing more about your own opinions or feelings versus which piece is best supported by the evidence. So just remember that. Don't write about your personal feelings and which one you agree with. Write about which one has the best evidence. Okay. Now, what do you think? Now, there's some other issues with the grammar here. Okay. I think that, for one thing, this word however here, I think that, this is kind of like one big sentence, right? So starting from Niagara Equipment and going all the way down here, it just kind of looks like one big huge sentence to me, so I would have liked to have seen the writer split this up into two different sentences. Okay, but what I really want to draw your attention to here, because, I don't want to overwhelm you and show you all the different, grammar things we need to fix here. I just want you to see this right here, this part right here that I bolded, where it says, having unlimited access to the internet increases productivity level and makes the employees happier. So see this apostrophe right here? I'd like you to pause the video and I want you to think about, should this apostrophe be here or not? Did the writer use this apostrophe correctly? Okay, so why don't you think about that? And when you're ready, unpause the video and I'll tell you what I think. Okay, so in this case, unfortunately, the writer did not use the apostrophe correctly. And again, we're not picking on anybody here, all right? Many students make mistakes like this, all right? So we're not singling anyone out here. I just want to, correct things here that jump out to me so that we can learn from it, okay? And so there's a couple ways you could do this. So in this case right here, you don't want to put an apostrophe, right? Apostrophes are for possession, all right? So you would want to say keeping things the same will increase the employee's happiness. Or, all right, so that would be correct. But if you're going to put that apostrophe here like this would imply that the employees own happier, which wouldn't work. So you would either want to just say makes the employees happier and take out that parenthesis or take out that apostrophe. Or what you could do is you could change the word happier to happiness, and it would read, keeping things the same will increase the employee's happiness. Now, if you see these 2 bullet points here, all right, I'd like you to think about what's the difference between putting the apostrophe between the E and the S and putting the apostrophe after the S. So do you know the difference there? Well, basically, if you put it between the E and the S here, that would be talking about one employee. So that would be keeping things the same will increase this one employee's happiness. Now, if you put the apostrophe after the S, that would refer to the group of employees. Keeping things the same will increase the employee's happiness, meaning the group, meaning multiple employees. So keep that difference in mind too when you use apostrophes. All right, so just something I wanted to show you here. Now again, that's not to say that this is, other than the apostrophe thing, this is perfect. All right, there's some other things we could tweak here. All right, that I'm not going to discuss. I just want you to see the structure is largely correct here. They did a good job structuring it. Just avoid writing about your personal belief in which side you think is better. Write about the piece that's best supported by the evidence, not the one that you agree with. And, watch that apostrophe mistake too. All right, those are the 2 main things I want you to get from this example here. All right, that's not to say the rest of it's perfect, but that's the main things I want you to see. Okay, so let's look at another prompt here. Analyze the arguments presented in the 2 speeches. So the prompts are all going to be largely the same thing. The prompt you get on your test should be about the same thing, whether it's speeches, whether it's emails, whether it's articles. In this case, it's 2 speeches. And this is the famous prompt about the best age to give kids a cell phone. So this is another real writing example, all right? Like I said, they all are. So let's read this here. It says, there is much debate on whether tweens should have cell phones. Deborah Pendergast's speech agrees that children should be able to have cell phones. On the other hand, Linda Sidner's speech goes against the idea of children having a cell phone. While both speeches are valid, Sidner's speech is better supported. Okay, so let's have you pause the video, and what I want you to think about, find me the topic sentence, find the 2 different positions, and find which speech the person thinks is the best supported by the evidence. And also just think about, is there anything that you would change about this? So right off the bat, the person says, there's much debate on whether tweens should have cell phones. All right, so nothing to complain about there. Great use of a topic sentence. So yeah, that's pretty good. And then here are the 2 different positions. Deborah Pendergast's speech agrees that children should be able to have cell phones. And then on the other hand, Linda Sidner's speech goes against the idea of children having a cell phone. So we can see also what the 2 different positions are here. So this is structured really, really, really nicely so far. Okay, and then the person also says, well, both speeches are valid. Sidner's speech is better supported. All right, so this is pretty much, and I'm not saying this is like perfect writing or anything like that by any means, but the structure here is perfect. All right, the structure is very good. All right, we know what the topic of the piece is. We know who the 2 positions are, and the last sentence tells us which speech the person thinks is better supported. And so these are just really, really straightforward, really clear, really easy to understand, and that's how your writing should be, right? You want to try to make your writing easy to understand. You don't want it to be confusing and complicated, and I think that this example is really good at showing us just writing that's really simple and straightforward, easy to understand. And I'm not saying this is perfect by any means. I'm not saying there's not things we could nitpick. One thing I want to nitpick here, though, is the idea, again, of this sentence right here. So Deborah Pendergast's speech agrees that children should be able to have cell phones. I would take out that to be able to have cell phones. I would just say something like Deborah Pendergast's speech agrees that children should have cell phones, or that children can have cell phones, something like that, rather than saying to be able to. All right. Okay, so those are a bunch of examples of introductions. Now let's talk about the body paragraph. So the body paragraphs, all right, are again, they're each going to start with a topic sentence. Now, you're ideally going to have a transition word or transition phrase. All right, these are going to be things like first, second, third, in addition, also, lastly, in the first place, in the second place. So you can pause the video if you want and add these to your notes here. These are just some examples. These are not the only ones. This is not the only way you could do it. But, using these in your topic sentence is going to help your score. Now, again, the GED testing service, they deny that there are keywords and phrases that you can sprinkle throughout your essay that, will help the computer give you a higher score. And I don't really think it's a good mindset to rely on that. Like, I think that you want to go in and write your essay to the best that you can as if it's a human grading it, and not worry about, how the algorithm or the automatic system, whatever it's called, is going to grade your work. But that being said, you want to put these transition words in because number one, they're going to strengthen your writing. But number two, a really good, you got to ask yourself, would a really strong essay have these transition words in it? The answer is yes. And since your work is going to be compared to stronger essays, your work is going to be compared to all the other essays, right? It's going to be compared to other essays, and you want the computer to see your work as, comparable to strong essays, all right? So if a strong essay would have these transition words in it, you want to have them in your writing, all right? So hopefully that makes sense here. So you put these words in your writing here because it's going to strengthen your writing. Then, hopefully when the computer grades your test, it's going to see those words. Hopefully it's going to help you get a better score, all right? So hopefully that makes sense here, right? So I'm not telling you just go stuff your essay with a bunch of words, all right, just for the sake of the computer grading your score, giving you a higher score. What I'm telling you is that, if you put these words in the right place, it's going to make your essay stronger. Then the computer will detect it's a stronger essay and hopefully give you a better score, if that makes sense, all right? And maybe that doesn't make sense. Maybe I'm just going off on a tangent here, but a lot of people are interested in the computer grading, and unfortunately there's not a lot of information out there. But I do know that you do need these transition words in your essay, so I'm guessing that, however it does it, the computer does pick up these words, all right? So you will want to make sure that you use these correctly, and these aren't the only examples of words you can use, all right? But let's get into it. Let's look at the first example here, all right? So remember earlier in the video, not that long ago, when we talked about real GED writing example A? Well, this is a body paragraph that I picked out from that person's, that same essay here. So let's look at this. So the person wrote, another example of the first article's stronger argument is the reference from the CDC and Department of Education in England to both studies about parents' education works. The CDC study claims that Safe to Sleep campaign helped reduce sudden infant death syndrome by 50% since 1994 by teaching parents to put babies to bed on their backs. Other study by Department of Education in England found that parents are important roles in the children's development stage. The study found children whose parents use harsh or inconsistent discipline are more likely to have poor attention spans, low levels of literacy, and antisocial behavior. So I'd like you to pause the video now. Just tell me generally, what do you think about this? Okay. What do you think about this generally speaking here? Okay, so let me show you what I see. We're going to look at some good and the bad, and, I've already done a whole video that I broke down this person's essay. It's on my channel, so, I don't want to nitpick like every single little thing here in this video. I just want to focus on what I think the most important things are. So note how the person started off the body paragraph by saying another example. So they have a transition phrase right here, all right? They said another example. Now you can steal that, all right? You can start your second and third body paragraph by saying another example if you want to, all right? That's a perfectly valid way to do it. And they give us a topic sentence, okay? They give us a topic sentence here. They say, another example of the first article's stronger argument is the reference from the CDC and Department of Education in England to both studies about parents' education work. So they're basically telling us what the paragraph's going to be about. So again, when you write your body paragraphs, okay, what you want to have done, hopefully before you start writing, is you pick out which essay is best supported by the evidence, and you want to pick out 3 main reasons why. In each body paragraph, you're going to, develop one of those 3 main reasons, okay? And ideally, you'll want to be able to, explain how the other position is weaker because it doesn't do that one thing, okay? That's what I mean by refutation. Okay, so now if we go back here, I think this sentence here is a really good sentence, all right? I'm not saying it's perfect, but it says, the CDC study claims that Safe to Sleep campaign helped reduce sudden infant death syndrome by 50% since 1994 by teaching parents to put babies to bed on their backs. So what I want you to see here is that, this is an example of good facts and good evidence and strong evidence. So anything like these numbers, these statistics, stuff like this is really, really good, all right? So the first article, the person's basically saying, the first article is stronger because they reference a study done by the CDC. Here's the study that they claim, all right? And so there's two things that, the person could do to make this even stronger, two main things here. All right, so they could, where I put add on here, all right, they could either add on another sentence. They could add one more sentence on here to draw a more direct connection between the study and the last sentence and how it makes the first article's argument stronger. Right, the writer just wrote, the study found children whose parents use harsh or inconsistent discipline are more likely to have poor attention spans, low levels of literacy, and antisocial behavior. You could say something like, this evidence from that study, is another reason why the first article's argument is stronger. What I think you could do that would also be really helpful here would be to, find an example of how the person in the other piece is just using their opinion and feelings rather than using evidence. And, just mention here as a refutation, in contrast, the other piece, just uses feelings and opinions and give a specific example of how they just used an opinion. All right, that would be an example of how you kind of sneak a refutation in here. Now, there's some things with like word choice and stuff that we could nitpick here, all right? And I pretty much, if I remember right, in the video where I broke down this whole essay, I think I probably went more in depth on that. But, overall, this is a pretty strong example of how you'd want to write a body paragraph. Okay, so now let's look on to another example of a body paragraph. So the person says, and secondly, Honoria names her sources. This is a mark of a strong argument because it proves that she did not make up her supporting facts. She uses a range of support, includes quotes from an author's studies and statistics. These diverse resources help to support her argument, not only because of the evidence they present, but also because they prove that her work is credible. This is another strong reason why her argument is the more credible one. So I'd like you to pause the video and just tell me what you think about this, all right? Think about this. Are they using transition words here? Are they giving us a topic sentence, all right? Is there anything major that jumps out at you that you would fix here? Okay, so let me tell you what I think here. And again, we're not going to nitpick every little detail. I just want to show you the main things. I really like this body paragraph. This is overall, this is very solid, all right? Is it perfect? Well, no, it's not perfect, but this is overall very solid, all right? So they start with the transition word. And instead of saying secondly, you could just say second, up to you. But we've got a transition word here. Secondly, Honoria names her sources. So the topic of this body paragraph is how Honoria names her sources and how this is a mark of a strong argument because it proves that she didn't make up her supporting facts. So very good here, all right? Very good. And the one thing that I think could make this stronger would be if the writer included an example of that, right? They say she uses a range of support, including quotes from an author's studies and statistics. That means, that's all very good. But, if the author could have maybe included like a specific statistic or, just give us an example, you can even quote something. If you would give an example of, some of the sources that she uses, I think that would make this stronger. And then if the person were also to look at the other evidence and, find examples of that person just using their opinion and feelings and speaking without citing sources, so that would be an example to sneak a refutation in here as well. So again, the person did a really good job. I just think it could have been improved by adding in here, at least one specific example of the studies, all right? And in the previous example that we looked at, right, if we look at the part that I highlighted in green, the person did a really, really good job. They're very specific here. The CDC study claims blah, 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 blah. They're citing the study here, and they're specifically, they're giving a very clear example of how the first article used good evidence, all right? So this paragraph here talks about how, Honoria's side is better because she named sources. All right, I would just put in one of those sources, just give a specific example here like this person did. And then, hey, if you want bonus points, definitely put in a refutation. Pick out an example of how the other person was just using her opinion or just using their, using sources that they don't cite, or like how the other person is not listing sources and just using their feelings or making weak arguments. If you could put a specific example of that in here too, that would kind of sneak a refutation in here as well, in my opinion. Okay, so the next example of a body paragraph is Niagara Equipment Corporation should not instill their new policy because there are studies showing that employees are happier when they have the freedom to browse the internet. For example, a 2009 study provides evidence showing that workers who could occasionally check the internet were happier at work than those who did not. Another study from the National University of Singapore found that web surfing refreshed employees, making them more, not less, productive. So what do you think of this here? Let me have you pause the video and first think about, is there a transition word in the first sentence here? And just what do you think about this generally? So let me tell you what I think here. So I think that, the person would be best including a transition word right here. All right. So if this is the first body paragraph, you could just say first, comma, or you could, if this is the second body paragraph, you could say second. All right. And again, here are some of these words that you can use to start paragraphs or to start lists. And again, you're welcome to steal these, use these in your own writing if you want to. You can pause the video and add these to your notes if you'd like to. It's totally up to you, but I think that would be one way to just get that transition word in right here would be good. And so really another thing here, maybe this is another really strong body paragraph here, right? So the person, they also have a good topic sentence here. Niagara Equipment Corporation should not instill their new policies because there are studies showing that employees are happier when they have the freedom to browse the internet. So it's telling me that the whole paragraph is going to be about these studies. And so they go on to, the person who wrote this went on to give 2 specific examples of the studies, which is really, really, really good. That's exactly what you want to do. So one way I think that this could be improved would be to add another sentence or even a couple sentences, showing how the other passage doesn't do this. All right. So you could say, the other person, argues against letting employees have the freedom to browse the internet, but they're using opinions and they're not stating facts from a study. And just give examples of how the other side is not doing this. All right. That's, if you can get the 2 points of views kind of going back and forth, which, we'll see in the example of a perfect essay, that is ideal, but that's kind of hard to do. So, at the very least here, just, keep in mind what the writer's doing here, because this is a really perfect example. This isn't a perfect example by any means is what I meant to say here. All right. I've been talking a lot. It's a long video. I hope this is informative. Sometimes if I misspeak, it's because I've been recording for a while now. But the point is, this is a good example overall. All right. Not perfect, but it's good. I think they could also, the main way you could improve this, among other ways, the main way to improve this would be to add in a refutation showing how the other side doesn't do this. All right. Okay, so here's another example of how someone wrote a body paragraph. And this is another example from real writing. So it says, another example of Sidner's speech being a better argument is that it highlights the statistics of cyberbullying. Sidner states between 14 and 19% of children reported being victims of cyberbullying. Study proves that there are, quote, over 90%, quote, of children having access to the cellular devices and the internet, so the number of bullying may be significantly higher than what is recorded. Pendergast's speech may counter, saying that children may have a sense of security knowing that they are able to contact their parents. Although that may be true for some cases, it is merely an opinion. All right, so pause the video. Tell me, what do you think of this? Is there a transition word? Is there a topic sentence? And just generally, what do you think? Did the person use evidence? Did the person do a good job here? What do you think? Okay, so let me tell you what I think here. And again, I am just kind of, I'm not going to nitpick every little thing, all right? I'm not saying that the grammar and everything is perfect. I'm just trying to give you the main takeaways here that are really what are important to know. So the person starts off with an excellent transition use. They say, another example. You can steal that and use that when you start your body paragraphs if you want to. Another example of Sidner's speech being a better argument is that it highlights the statistics of cyberbullying. Okay, so again, they've laid out a topic sentence here really, really well. So the way this is structured is pretty nice so far. Okay, so here's something to consider, all right? So the writer said, so the number of bullying may be significantly higher than what is recorded. I would probably say, so the amount of bullying is likely much higher than what the children are reporting. All right, so just a change I would make to that one sentence here. But yeah, I really like the topic sentence here. And one other thing that I would nitpick here, and again, I'm not nitpicking every little thing. We'll be here forever doing that. I have a whole video where I do kind of nitpick every little thing here, but the last sentence seems a little bit long. It says Pendergast's speech may counter, saying that children may have a sense of security, knowing that they are able to contact their parents, comma, although I would probably just make these two separate sentences, just so that it doesn't go on too long. But what the person did here that is really, really, really good is, they transition word right here, topic sentence, they, cite evidence from the text. They say Cinder states this, they're using evidence, they're using facts here, and then they're also sneaking in a refutation here, right, by saying that, the other side would counter and say this. So, this person is really getting both Cinder and Pendergast kind of going back and forth. That's like, if you say, hey, McDonald's is better than Burger King, and your friend says, no, Burger King's better because of this, and you say, well, McDonald's is better because of this, and you get going back and forth. That's kind of what you really ideally would want to do to get a really high score in your essay, although that's kind of hard to do. But that's kind of what we see here. So the person here is they're talking about, here's what Cinder believes, and here are the facts that Cinder states. Now, Pendergast would counter, and Pendergast would say, well, actually, saying that children may have a sense of security, knowing that they are able to contact their parents. And then you explain why, that's Pendergast's point, but it's not really a good point because it's just an opinion, all right? So essentially, I think what the person's trying to say here is that Cinder is, making a case here and using statistics. Pendergast would disagree. Here's why Pendergast would disagree, but Cinder's still right because Pendergast is just giving an opinion, whereas Cinder, whatever the name is, Cinder is using actual facts and data. So that's basically what the person's trying to say here, which is exactly what you want to do, all right? So there's other things we can nitpick here, but this is a really good example of how you would want to do a body paragraph overall. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Now, we've talked about the introduction, we've talked about the body, and again, this video is meant for beginners. This is to lay a foundation for you and hopefully help you get at least some points on the essay here. All right, we're not striving for perfection here, but hopefully you've seen some examples of how to do introductions, how to do body paragraphs. So let's talk about conclusions now. And so here is an example of the conclusion, all right? So this person says, despite the argument and evidence given by the Kai Fernandez's article, it appears that the parenting education should be mandatory offers a stronger case. The author's ideas are backed up by logical explanation and facts. Though there is some evidence provided in Sophia Thomas's article, it is weak and vague. For example, Sophie Thomas mentioned funding and enforcing problems, but no evidence and facts to support this argument. As presented, the parenting argument should be mandatory is much stronger than its counterpoint because it is much better supported and more convincing. Okay, so a couple of notes here. So, we've got a little bit of grammatical issues here that I would want to point out, which I've kind of highlighted. Despite the argument and evidence given by the Kai Fernandez's article, you probably just want to say, given by Kai Fernandez's article, all right, without the word the. And this word through, I think that the person meant to say, though there is some evidence instead of through. And so I know this because I read this whole essay, and I actually have a video where I break down this whole entire essay and kind of nitpick it a little bit more. But I'm just telling you here what the person did here when they say, so Sophie Thomas mentioned funding and enforcing problems, but no evidences and facts to support this argument. This is something that they didn't mention in the piece, and then they just put that into the conclusion. So as a general rule of thumb, when you write your conclusion, try not to introduce anything new. The conclusion should basically just kind of mirror, it's like the polar opposite of your introduction, or not even the polar opposite. It's just kind of like restating your introduction, really. You don't want to mention something new that you in your conclusion that you didn't discuss previously. So if you get to your conclusion and all of a sudden you've got this new idea of something, to write about, that's a sign that maybe you should go back and revisit at least one of your body paragraph. So what this writer did is say, for example, Sophie Thomas mentioned funding and enforcing problems, but no evidences and facts to support this argument. The problem is that earlier in their piece, they didn't mention this really, and they just kind of stuck it into the conclusion. So I would, instead of sticking something new that you've never discussed before in your conclusion, take that thing that you want to put in your conclusion and go put that in one of your body paragraphs and try to make your body paragraph better. All right, so just my opinion. I mean, overall, they got the job done here, right? So the conclusion is just kind of like, really kind of the same thing. You're just, as the intro, you're just restating what the two positions are, and just restating why, for one last time, why you think one is better than the other. All right. All right, so here's another example of a conclusion. So the person said here, in conclusion, Honoria's argument is proven to be the better supported and credible one. By using a myriad of evidence, naming those sources, and providing counter-arguments, she builds her argument up and creates a strong stance, while Justine's argument is based mostly on her opinion. So let's have you pause the video here and think about it. What do you think about this conclusion? What do you think should be changed here? Okay, let's go over this. So this conclusion here, one thing I didn't mention in the previous essay is that you can just put in conclusion as your transition phrase for your concluding paragraph. So if we look here at this, all right, the person starts off this conclusion by saying in conclusion, comma. All right, so if you're taking notes, I would put this in your notes too. When you write your concluding paragraph, just say in conclusion, comma, and then explain. Go on to write the rest of your conclusion. But this is a really, really, really good transition word or a transition phrase to start the conclusion with. All right, so this is really, really, really good here. And the only thing I would really nitpick is the last sentence where it says, "While Justine's argument is based mostly on her opinion." The person might want to revise this because this seems, just off the top of my head, this seems a little bit like a fragment, like a sentence fragment. Saying, while Justine's argument is based mostly on her opinion, you can instead say something like, Justine's argument is weaker because it's based mostly on her opinion, just to make this like a more complete sentence. But I think this is pretty clear. They also used a good use of vocabulary words here, like myriad of evidence. And so another thing that sometimes students want to do, and they think this will boost their score, is to just use like a bunch of big and fancy vocabulary words throughout the writing. And using strong vocabulary words for sure is definitely a positive thing. But the problem is, if you're not 100% sure you're using the big fancy words the right way, just don't use them, all right? And in this case, the person used some, bigger vocabulary words correctly. So there's nothing to pick on there. But just a general rule of thumb, using good, big, fancy, vocabulary words is good if you use them correctly. If you're not sure if you're using them correctly, just stick to simple words, all right? Just stick to simple words. That would be my suggestion there. Okay, let's look at another example of a conclusion from a real essay. So this person said, in conclusion, while Niagara Equipment Corporation makes some excellent points, they have only one survey result that supports their argument. On the other hand, Bell and the undersigned employees have multiple surveys and studies showing that unrestricted internet access is beneficial to the employees, therefore making Niagara Equipment Corporation's argument less credible. So let's have you, again, pause the video. Let me know what you think about this conclusion here. Think about it, and then think about what would you change. Is this a good conclusion? And then we'll go over it. Okay, so there's a couple things I really like here. So the person starts off by saying, in conclusion, which is always really good. They also use a really good transition phrase here when they say, on the other hand. All right, so that's really good use of the transition phrase here as well. The only thing I would really change here is the last sentence where it says, therefore, comma, making Niagara Equipment Corporation's argument less credible. I think that this last sentence, we'd want to take another look at this sentence and maybe, say something like, therefore, Niagara Equipment Corporation's argument is the less credible. Something like that, just to improve this a little bit so it doesn't appear to be a fragment of a sentence, and it's just to make this appear more to be more of a complete sentence. But other than that, this is really solid. This is a good conclusion, all right? This is overall a very good example of a conclusion, and just something you should take note of, of when you're thinking of how to do conclusions. This is really good. They start off by saying in conclusion, and they just kind of restate the whole thing. I would just, probably rewrite that last sentence there to make it appear more of a complete sentence. But anyway, here's another example. In conclusion, about 10 years old is the right age for children to get a cell phone. The argument support that is 16 years old is weaker because cell phones gives children access to all the frightening dangers. Text bullying means using a cell phone to send cruel, embarrassing. So what do you think about this conclusion here? Let me have you pause the video, think about this one, and then we'll go over it. Okay, so here, a couple things. So instead of saying in conclusion, all right, in putting this colon here, I would probably just say in conclusion, comma, and then about with a lowercase a. And this conclusion, I think, it hits on the basic things, but I think this conclusion would want to, the author would probably want to, rethink this conclusion a little bit just to make it more clear. I think, especially like the last sentence, text bullying means using a cell phone to send cruel, embarrassing. And again, this is not to pick on anybody's writing by any means. We're just doing this to learn. So all of the essays we've just looked at so far have all had strengths, and they've all had areas to nitpick and improve on. Now, this is an example of an essay that got a perfect score, so there's really not much to even nitpick about this one. I mean, you can't really pick on an essay that has a perfect score, but there's a lot of things we can learn from this, and I'm not going to show you the whole essay. I have a video where I break down like all the different nuances and things, but there's some things that I think are going to really help you here just by learning them. So the prompt for this essay is basically the same as the others. It just says, analyze the arguments presented in the press release and the letter to the editor. And so you're basically, in this case, to write a press release and a letter to the editor, and to basically compare the two, pick which position is best supported, and that's what the person who wrote this was to write about. So let's look at the introductory paragraph here from the perfect score essay. It says, both the press release and the letter to the editor offer positions that are supported by both fact and opinion. The press release seeks to extort the new bill for expansion of Highway 17, while the latter argues that the passing of the bill could prove detrimental to the district. While both sides make an acceptable case, the letter provides a stronger argument. So I'd like you to pick out the topic sentence, both positions, and also identify which side does the person think is making the acceptable case. So now would be a good time to pause the video, think about this, and remember this is a perfectly scored essay here, so there's plenty to learn from this example. So the first is very clear here. It says the first topic sentence is so clear. In the first sentence it says, both the press release and the letter to the editor offer positions that are supported by both fact and opinion. So really strong topic sentence here. And so I've hit on this over and over again throughout this video that, your introductory paragraph, you really want to start off with that topic sentence, identify both positions, and then state which one is best supported by the evidence for a really high score. And note that in the essay that got a perfect score, that the person did exactly what I've been preaching throughout this video here, all right? And so they identify both positions here, and note that the person who wrote this did this in one different sentence here. And I said at the beginning of the video, or I don't know when it was earlier in the video, that you could state both positions in one sentence or in two. And I generally like to recommend for students to do it in two separate sentences, but if you're confident with your grammar, you can do it like this in just one sentence, and that's perfectly acceptable too. So this is really a lot to take note on here. Okay, and so then they say that, well, both sides make an acceptable case. The letter provides a stronger argument, all right? And so this is just really clear and simple, easy to understand, and, they just followed that formula perfectly here, and it led to them getting a perfect score, all right? Now, there was more to it than just their intro, but this is really, there's not really much I could nitpick here, to be honest. This is exactly how you would want your first paragraph to look, all right? So let's go on and look at an example here of how the person did a body paragraph. So they start off by saying here, another example of the better supported argument is the letter is the reference to the construction jobs as temporary. So notice here that they started with a transition phrase, another example, and you can steal that too and use that in your body paragraphs to start them. You can say another example for your body paragraph 2 and 3 if you want to. All right, and so for your first paragraph, you could say the first example, okay? Now, they have a topic sentence here as well, all right? So again, this is just highlighting this just really to show you what they did well. So they go on to say, the press release praises the new jobs created by the highway construction as this is a valid point. However, the author of the letter is correct in the fact that the jobs will not create a boom in the district's economy or fill in the gap caused by the closures in the manufacturing plants, as the press release leads listeners to believe. So what they're doing right here is that the writer basically is going directly into a refutation. The writer takes a point from the press release and they acknowledge that it's a valid point and then immediately follow up by presenting the opposing point of view from the author of the letter. So, they're doing a really good job of kind of getting the two views going back and forth here. And then they go on to say, the road construction does not solve the longer-term issue of unemployment in the town. In addition, the author of this letter counters the argument that new motels, restaurants, and gas stations along the highway will create permanent jobs for the residents of the town. She explains that only minimum wage jobs will remain. This is a valid argument also, as unemployed residents will need enough income to support a household, would not be much better off. Providing restaurants or motel jobs is very unlikely to feed or support an entire family. It will not pick up the laid off employees of the manufacturing plants who may have worked for many years towards promotions and a pension. So counter argument is a really, counters the argument. I've highlighted and bolded that phrase there if you kind of want to take that and use that in your own writing. That's just a really powerful phrase to use here. And so the writer is saying that the author of the letters counters the argument of the opposing author. So another thing, I've bolded the word restaurants here because this word is spelled incorrectly. And so this is just a point here that, spelling largely does not count on your GED test. This is a perfectly scored essay with a word that's misspelled. And spelling does not count, but you have to be careful because, if you spell words that are, that spell a different word, that could kind of throw off the grading. So spelling generally doesn't count, but, if there's a word that you want to use and you have no idea how to spell it, and you might want to think of a different word. I mean, spelling doesn't technically count, and it won't technically hurt you if you have, some minor spelling errors throughout the piece. But, if your spelling is way off and it causes you to spell a different word or something like that, the system might have trouble grading that. So just something to keep in mind. But generally, spelling is not going to hurt you, all right? And the person used quotes here too. Quote, only minimum wage jobs remain, so that's always a good thing to do. Now, note that if you don't want to directly copy and paste from the article. That's really bad. And you don't want super really long quotes because at that point it's kind of like you're basically, even though you're quoting it, you're kind of, it kind of seems like you're just trying to take up space in your essay and kind of fluff up your essay by using really long quotes. So don't use really super long quotes. Just use quotes, that are relatively short here. And always put quotes. Don't just copy out of the passage, because if you have too much stuff that's copied directly out of the passage, you can fail the essay just for that. And they go on to say this is a valid argument, which is just another good word choice. So I'm just kind of highlighting these, different statements and phrases for different reasons here. But again, this is a really solid job that the person did here. And, what I want to point out is that all of the essays that we've looked at here, every single one of them from, the earlier examples here that were submitted to me by real GED test takers, they all have certain elements in them that were serious strengths, all right? And so, look at things in this perfectly scored essay here and ask yourself, what can I take away from this that I can use in my own writing? And also think about, the examples that we've looked at earlier in the video, how are they similar to this person's, to the perfect essay, and how are they different, all right? Now, when we look at the conclusion here, I just want to show you, this is kind of a long conclusion, which, since this person got a perfect score, you might think that, hey, the more that you write, the better your score is going to be. And I would say that that's true if you write more that is helpful for your essay, right? You don't want to just keep writing more and more stuff just to make your essay longer. But, generally, to do a good job, you are going to have to, the more that you write, it's only going to help if your writing is serving a purpose, all right? So this conclusion is kind of longer than the examples that we looked at earlier. But they say, despite the arguments and evidence given by the press release, it appears that the letter to the editor offers a stronger case. And so note that they didn't start by saying in conclusion, comma, like I said to do. So I would recommend for most people to start that way, but you don't necessarily have to, as the person who got a perfect score on the essay, shows us right here. All right, so they go on to say the author's ideas are backed up by logical explanations and facts with a few speculations. Though the press release offers some fact, it is mainly specced with anticipations and hopes driven to overshadow any doubts and quell any concerns. The letter is penned by a resident of the town and owner of a business subject to first-hand opinions of the citizens of the district. The press release is pushed by an elected representative who, upon visiting the town a number of times and consulting a small percentage of the constituents, is convinced she understands the majority. Although both parties may very well have the best interests of the district in mind, and either position could be correct, it is clear that the letter provides a better supported argument. All right, so I guess just to restate this, it's easy to come away from this conclusion and say, hey, this is really long,
I don't think the person got a perfect score on this essay for having a really long conclusion. I think this conclusion is just very detailed and very clear and easy to follow here. All right, so, if you can write a really good conclusion and, just a couple sentences, then if that's all it takes you, that's all it takes you. But, if you want to write more, it's okay to write more. Just make sure that you're writing more with a purpose, not just to try to write more because you think it's going to help your score. All right, so, the perfect essay here, note that their body paragraphs and their conclusion were, I would say, in general, longer than the other examples we looked at. But I don't think they got a perfect score on this essay just because it was longer. I think that the perfect score, I think it was longer because that's what the person felt that they had to do to, make a more complete and full essay. And so, anyway, so this is just something to think about here. This person has a perfect score on the essay, so this is kind of a guideline to think about when you write your essay.